Hi, my name is Karen Hardin, and this is my presentation on COVID-19. In preparing for this assignment, I spent a lot of time trying to find just the right angle I wanted to approach regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. And as a mom, I have many friends that are struggling with the issues concerning whether or not to send their children back to school for face-to-face instruction. I'm fortunate in that my child attends a university, and I don't have to make those decisions. But I can't imagine how parents of elementary-aged children are going to go about deciding how their child should be educated, virtually or face-to-face. But I feel that the bigger question is whether their child will be safe when returning back to school. So I decided I wanted to look at the data to see if there was a way to visualize how COVID is affecting local counties and the children who live there. Here are some of the questions that I thought we needed to consider. Because one of the most pressing issues in the state of Kentucky, as well as across the country, are the decisions made by parents regarding sending their children back to school. Will they receive the best education? Can a virtual education be as impactful as learning in a classroom? As a parent, can you teach your child? But really, before you can weigh any of those factors, you have to make a determination on whether or not it's safe for your child to return to school. So I looked at the data to try to see what I could compile. So the first thing I needed to do was to find the data for my representations. And I really didn't find what I needed in the notebooks that were provided, so I decided I would create my own. So I created my own Excel spreadsheet. And the first thing I did was I pulled up a map with the counties in Kentucky. The map is broken down into areas, and I chose 4 areas to be represented. And each area of the map, or region of the map, had 8 to 10 counties. So the first thing I did was I chose Warren County, which is in what I call region number 1, which is represented in red. I chose that county because it's the home of Bowling Green, which is where we're at. The second region I chose was a little farther north, and it includes Jefferson County, which includes Louisville and the surrounding metropolitan area. So I thought that gave us a dynamic of a bigger city. The third region I chose included Fayette County, and it was kind of a hybrid. It has Lexington and the area around Lexington, but it also has some smaller counties, as you can see represented in the light green here. And the fourth region I chose was the Cumberland area, which has quite a few counties. They're smaller in size, but they're also more rural counties, so they're separated by distance. And I thought that might give a good variety of different areas to search. So each of the regions were represented by a different color, and in this particular visualization, I'm going to show the county, the number of COVID cases, and the percent. And the percent is really important, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. The population, and then it references what region that they're in. I also went on and gathered some more information. So for each of the counties in a region, I then went and found how many schools were in that region, the number of students, how many, the student to teacher ratio, because I thought all of that information would be important. And then I also inputted the number of COVID cases and the percentage. Put all that information into my spreadsheet, and I uploaded it here into Tableau. The first thing that I found was that there's too many counties to consider here. And a lot of them are smaller counties. So what I did was I then separated out the top 10 counties by population. And I thought we would look at those because it allowed the data to be a little bit more spread over our chart here. So in this visualization, I decided to look at the number of students and the percent of COVID cases. So here you can see Jefferson County, which is Louisville, has the biggest percentage of COVID cases. It's the darkest in green on our range of colors. And we go all the way down to some of the smaller counties, Allen and Adair. Warren County, which we are housed in, is somewhat a little bit below the middle mark. What I represented on here was also the percentage of COVID cases. And you may wonder, why is this important? And the reason this is important is because the Kentucky Education Association came out and said that the Teachers Association does not want the teachers to go back to school in counties where the percentage of COVID cases is above 4%. And so you can see the quote down there, but they would like 21 consecutive days of the percentage rate of COVID cases to be below 4% before they feel it's okay for teachers and students to go back to school. And I thought that was really important. But if you look at this right now, what that would show is that Jefferson County, which is Louisville, Fayette County, which is Lexington, and Warren County would not send their students to school if we were to follow that. But it really made me wonder, are we saying that the areas with the biggest population and therefore the most number of students, simply because they have a high ratio, should not go and send their children back for face-to-face classes? And I thought we have to have other factors to consider. There have to be ways that schools in these areas can take certain measures to make sure that the students that are coming would be safe. So what I started to think about was what we really need to look at is the number of contacts that a student can come into. So clearly, if you have a large population and your students go home at night and they interact with their parents and their parents have interacted at work and you're in a very highly populated area, there's a better chance that they will come in contact with someone with COVID-19. I thought we need to look at the number of students in a school, because if your school has a lot of students, every day you're coming in contact with more people and potential exposure. And I thought possibly we needed to look at the student to teacher ratio. So I pulled out those figures. And so on this chart, we are looking at first the student to teacher ratio and then the number of schools in each of the counties. And so the first thing I decided was that the teacher to student ratio really wasn't very informative. It seems like there must be a standardized level in the state of Kentucky, and most of the schools had a student to teacher ratio between 15 and 17. So the number of students in each classroom was really somewhat similar almost across the board, and I really think that didn't make very much of a difference. But what I did notice for each of the county, that there was a huge disparity in the number of schools. And so, again, trying to figure out the number of contacts that students could have and their potential to exposure, I tried to break that information down a little bit more. So what I did was I looked at each of the schools. I took the top 8, and they are represented here. And I looked at the number of schools and the number of students. So you look, they're represented here by the schools with the highest cases of COVID, Jefferson County, Louisville being the highest, then Lexington, then Bowling Green. And what I did was I looked at the number of students divided by the number of schools. So you would see how many students were in each school. And here's where it started to get a little bit interesting. Allen County, which is located in Scottsville, Kentucky, is here. And they have 3,099 students across 5 schools, which means each school has 619 children. Allen County has a very low COVID rate. It's 0.65, and they only have 226 cases. But then you look at Warren County. Warren County has 15,740 students across 36 schools, which means there's 437 students in each school. And they have a very high rate. And according to the figures, at 7%, they're in one of those categories where they would not like students to go back to face-to-face instruction. But what I started to look at is if I was a parent and the school only had 437 students in it, there's a lot less chance of my child coming in contact with someone with COVID, as opposed to Allen County, which has almost 200 additional students in the school, plus teachers, plus staff to support them. So I clearly began to see that there were other factors that needed to be considered as you went through and looked at whether or not it would be safe for your child to go back to school. And really what I wanted to focus on was the fact that simply because you have the highest COVID rate and the largest population and a high percentage, that didn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't send your children back to those schools. So this is my final dashboard, and it's a combination of everything that I had. And this is the conclusion that I came to. I found this all to be really fascinating, and I think there is a lot of potential to investigate whether or not your children would be safe to return back to school. But I think I quickly discovered that the data I had was a good start, but wasn't complete. And I don't know if the data that I needed is actually available to really get the answer that I wanted. I think as we go forward into fall of 2020, we're going to be able to have access to some new data that I think would be able to take these visualizations and make them much more informative. If I had my way and I could add more information to my spreadsheet, I would want to know this breakdown by school. I would want to somehow factor in if the school is offering face-to-face learning as well as visual learning, or both. Do the parents have to make a choice, or do they have the option to make a choice? I would like to know how many families opted for each one. If half of the students in a particular school are choosing to stay home, then I might feel it was safer to send my child because they would have less contacts. I would like some kind of measure to show what the safety measures are that are being demonstrated by the school, because I think that would have an impact as to how safe it would be to send my child. And then I would want to know what some of the protocols are. What happens if a child gets sick? Are they quarantined? Is the class quarantined? What if they have a sibling? Is the sibling quarantined? And what happens if the teacher comes down with a case of COVID? I think in 6 months, we will have a lot more information that we could be adding to this spreadsheet, and we could come up with a better model and better visualizations as to whether or not it would be safe for our kids to return to school. And just a couple thoughts to end. I know that sending your kid back to school is a really tough decision for each family to make, and I don't really feel that it is one that needs to be made based on data. But what I do think is parents need to be able to have all of the information possible to make the very best decision, and I feel that this is a good beginning, and maybe added with some more information, this might be a tool to give them one more piece of information to consider when they're trying to make that really, really tough decision. My ultimate hope is that no one has to make this decision at the end of the year, but if so, maybe this will give them some options on how to look at the data that's available. Thank you.